They say a single moment can split your life in two. For me, that moment came in a ballroom. Under crystal lights, with my glasses flying and a dress so white it could have swallowed the whole room. My name is Aurora Hughes. I'm 6. I raised one son, my Ethan, on nights of double shifts and mornings with a hymn on my lips. I learned to live small and steady, to keep my joys private and my fears tucked away. People called us ordinary. That was the point. My husband and I decided long ago that we would live modestly, so our family's life could stay exactly that, ours. No show, no boasting, and a quiet dignity that suited us fine. So when Ethan brought Juliet home 2 years ago, I offered her tea, a spare pillow, and a smile. I hoped she would become the daughter I never had. Instead, her smile learned to cut. The first time I saw the way she looked at my apartment, it was like someone had dropped a pebble into a still pond. Her face changed. She found the carpet too old, the furniture too worn, my curtains the wrong color for the life they wanted. She never said it outright, but the look said everything. This is not the place for people they intended to be. Little insults became frequent. Aurora, don't you think it's time to downsize? She would say. You can't keep a place like this at your age. She asked questions like suggestions and wrapped them in pity. I told myself to be patient. I told myself marriage changes people, that young couples build new lives and it takes time. But patience is a practice, and mine wore thin when the wedding day arrived. A day I had always imagined standing near my son, watching him step into the life he chose. I arrived at the ballroom carrying a small box of cookies I had baked that morning. The room smelled like flowers and applause. Guests milled and laughed. Ethan hugged me with the same gentle squeeze he gave as a boy. For a second, everything was right. Then Juliet took the stage in a way I could not have predicted. Give me the keys, she said, as calm as autumn sunlight. That was the first whisper of what came next. I was confused. What keys? I asked, voice small. The apartment keys, she said. And there it was, the presumption that I had no right to my space, to the life I had created. We'll need it while we look for something bigger. I should have gone with logic, with restraint. Instead, perhaps with a stubbornness that had kept me afloat for years, I refused. I told her I lived there. I told her I was not moving on the whim of anyone's honeymoon plans. The slap came so fast I didn't have time to brace. My glasses flew from my face, the lenses scattering like crystal snow across polished floor. For a heartbeat everything was noise, the hush of 100 mouths, the rattle of broken glass, the thump of my own heartbeat in my ears. You're selfish, Juliet shouted, her voice sharp and bright as a knife. A woman your age does not need so much space. Her hand trembled not from anger, but from the certainty of entitlement. Ethan stood frozen, not by a lack of feeling, but by the paralysis that came when someone you love suddenly chooses the other side. No one helped me up. Guests watched as if watching a play they'd been told to ignore afterward. Whispers slithered through the crowd. Some shook their heads, others pretended not to see. I remember kneeling on that glossy floor and feeling the whole world tilt under me. Humiliation is a weather. It arrives slow as fog, and then, when someone throws open a window, it becomes a storm. I left the ballroom with a taste of copper in my mouth, and the sound of heels echoing behind me, not footsteps of concern, but the quick steps of people who wanted to distance themselves from discomfort. The weeks that followed were a study in erasure. Invitations stopped coming. Calls were shorter. Busy, Ethan would say, each time as if the word could cushion a growing absence. Juliet began to come by less as well, and when she came, she wore a smile that resembled interest, but felt like calculation. She criticized dishes I made, the way I kept the house, the clothes I chose. Little jabs masquerading as concern. Then the demands escalated. An offhand remark about my car. A question about why I still worked mornings at the flower shop. It was as though she was cataloging every piece of me she considered expendable. When they said they wanted the apartment, it wasn't just the rooms they wanted. It was the life held there. The worn armchair where I'd read to Ethan during stormy nights. The shelf with trophies for piano recitals and paper crowns from kindergarten plays. The photo of my husband, Robert, smiling with chalk on his collar from some long ago workday. They wanted the memories that made the place worth more than wood and plaster. People who haven't had everything taken from them find it easy to tell you what you should do. Just move, they say. Find something smaller. But the negotiations we make with memory and dignity do not bend to instructions. The things you sweep into boxes carry more than linens and plates. They carry the weight of promises and the scent of people's voices when they were small. So I made a plan. Not from anger, but from a place that had seen too much to be surprised anymore. I called a lawyer, quietly. In those middle hours where thinking feels like peeling an orange, slow and methodical and necessary. I reviewed papers written in a steadier hand than the one shaking now. We had once decided to shield our means, to live modestly so that our children would grow without the noise of money. That secretiveness had been a blessing. Now, after the slap and the silence, it became a tool. A will is not only for dividing what you own. It can be a compass for who you choose to be after the end of your days. I amended mine, quietly, with the clarity that comes when you have been seen and dismissed. I left the apartment to a trust set up for women who had been left behind, the widows and single mothers who, like me at times, had to put on a brave face and keep the lights on. I left a portion to an education fund for children of single parents. I left enough so the house could be sold and the money used for something that would stand for kindness and not for entitlement. I could have made it a spiteful act. A public reading of the will at a family gathering. A declaration on the steps of a courthouse. But cruelty is a different kind of poverty. I wanted my choice to be an example, not a spectacle. I wanted it to teach without shaming, to be firm without being vengeful. When Ethan called to ask what I had done, his voice was frayed. "Mom, what have you done?" he asked. The question carried guilt like a second skin. I told him, plainly, that I had protected what mattered to me. My dignity and the promise I had kept to myself and to my late husband. I told him we would talk when he was ready to listen. People imagine that forgiveness happens in a single breath, that apologies patch the deepest cuts like a Band-Aid. They don't. Forgiveness is a labor. It is a decision you work into habit through small, steady actions. I let him come back through doors that had been closed when he asked, properly and with a humility that matched mine. Not a grovel, but a seat at the table. Not immediate trust, but conversation. Because holding on to someone you love while also holding them accountable is the hard, right work. The days after the will became public, not announced by me but by the quiet turning of papers and the understanding of neighbors, changed the air. Some people were surprised. Others, relieved. The trust I set up helped a woman across town keep her home for 6 months, while a scholarship helped a boy whose mother worked nights to pay for his school supplies. Those were the outcomes that felt like warmth. Juliet came back to the apartment once. Shy and smaller than her wedding day posture, her eyes had new creases. Not from makeup, but from 8 months of nights building a life she had thought she could control. She stood at the threshold and, for the first time in a long time, she looked at me with something like regret. "I'm sorry," she said. The words were small, but they were real. I met her apology with a response she did not expect. "I forgive you," I said, and meant it. But I also told her, candidly, that forgiveness would not mean erasing what happened. You will not take this home and pretend nothing happened, I told her. You will learn to center others the way you center yourself. You will learn to be kind without calculation. What followed was not a fairy tale. Reconciliation, in which a single conversation fixed years of neglect. It was worse and better than that. It was the slow work of rebuilding. They moved into a house they could afford without taking mine. They visited more responsibly. They learned, step by halting step, how to apologize and how to act like it mattered. Sometimes people are transformed by hardship. Sometimes they only learn because someone they love refuses to give up on them. My son learned painfully and imperfectly. That family is not an inheritance you grab. It is something you earn every day with respect, time, and attention. There is a lesson here. If you will let me speak plainly, dignity cannot be rented or borrowed. It is not for sale. You either live it or you learn its value the hard way. For me, the bruises faded. The shame left like a visitor who had overstayed. My eyes healed. The parking lot where I used to watch couples disappear into cars became less of a wound and more of a place I could witness lives move forward, including my own. Years later, on a spring morning when the light cut the kitchen into gold, I sat with a cup of tea and a letter from a woman I had never met. She wrote to thank me for the trust money that had kept her son in school. In her words, I heard echoes of the life I'd insisted on protecting. It was a small, steady victory. The kind that doesn't make headlines but does stitch the world back together. If you are listening and you have been pushed aside, humiliated, or made to feel small, I want you to remember 3 things. First, your worth is not determined by how others measure you. Second, protection can be gentle and wise. It does not have to be loud to be effective. And third, forgiveness can coexist with boundaries. You can forgive someone and also teach them how to treat you. When I tell this story now, I do not tell it to wound anyone. I tell it because it is truth, a truth about small lives and large choices, about how ordinary people like me can claim dignity and use their choices to help others. I tell it because, in the end, the world grew kinder by inches, and that kindness was more than enough. If this story moved you, if it made you think of someone who needs a little more patience or a little less apology, do me a favor, like this video, subscribe for more stories, and share this with the person who needs to hear it. Stories keep us human. They teach, they heal, and sometimes they change the course of a life. Thank you for sitting with me. Keep your head high, hold your people tenderly, and never let anyone take your space without asking. And without respect,